A Nigerian pastor gets on camera. He's emotional, almost desperate. He says something that sounds absolutely crazy.
United Nations, I know you're watching it. American Senate, you are watching what I'm doing, I'm saying here. Special advisor to Trump, now, please tell Trump to save our life in Nigeria. They are killing Christians in Nigeria.
Now, here is where it gets strange. He records these videos in late October, and then days later, Trump posts on Truth Social that he has ordered the Pentagon to prepare for military action against Nigeria. Same country, same reason, almost exact words.
They're killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria. And they have other countries very bad also. You know that. That part of the world, very bad. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen.
But I started digging into this story, and let me tell you, I had to make this entire video because what I found kept getting deeper. The pastor's plea, that might be the least interesting part of this whole thing, because when you start connecting the dots, you realize Trump's threat to Nigeria shows up at a very specific moment in history.
Christianity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria. We stand ready, willing, and able to save our great Christian population around the world. This is not going to happen. The killing of Christians is not going to happen.
And it's happening to another country at the exact same time.
This morning, President Trump considering U.S. strikes on...
In the next few minutes, I will show you what's really going on. But first, let me take you back to where all this started. The pastor's name is John Joseph Hayab. He's a Christian leader from northern Nigeria, and in his videos, he's genuinely distraught. He talks about churches being attacked, Christians being unalived, and villages being burned down. And he looked into the camera and basically said, America, you invaded Iraq for less than this. You went into Afghanistan. Why won't you help us? And look, when you watch these videos, you feel it. This isn't political theater. The man is genuinely scared of his community. In Nigeria's middle belt and northern regions, the violence is real. Between January and August 2025 alone, one monitoring group documented over 7,000 Christians unalived. So, when Trump responds publicly on Truth Social, saying he's going to eliminate these terror groups and protect Christians, it looks like he's answering a prayer, literally. But here is the first question you need to ask. How did Trump even see these videos? Because they weren't exactly going viral in the US before his announcement. Turns out Fox News ran a segment on them. NBC later reported that Trump saw the Fox coverage and within hours posted his threats. Now, the White House, according to NBC, went into scramble mode because nobody in the State Department or Pentagon knew this was coming. So, we have a pastor pleading for intervention. Then Trump sees it on TV, makes a threat. Seems straightforward, right? Except Nigeria's government says something completely different. And that's where the story stops being simple. Now, Nigeria's presidential spokesman, Daniel Bwala, came out immediately and said, "We refuse to view terrorism through a lens of profiling." They claim that Christians are being targeted. That's fabrication. Strong words. But here's what makes this complicated. He is not saying the violence isn't happening. He is saying it's not one-sided. And the numbers They tell a more complicated story. Yes, 7,087 Christians were unalived in the first 8 months of 2025. But in that same period, 2,320 Muslims were also unalived. And since 2009, the total breakdown looks like this: 125,000 Christians, 60,000 Muslims, both unalived in what Nigeria describes as terrorism and communal violence, not religious genocide. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. If you are a Christian in northern Nigeria, watching your neighbors being unalived, you are not thinking about statistics. You are thinking about survival. The pastor's plea is real. But if you are a Muslim in that same region, but you are not extreme enough for them, you are looking at Trump's statement and thinking, wait, what about us? So, which narrative is true? Both, actually. And that's the problem. Nigeria's violence is a mess of ethnic conflicts, land disputes, political failures, and yes, religious extremism. Boko Haram attacks everyone. Armed herders clash with farmers. Sometimes it's Muslims versus Christians. Sometimes it's just about resources and grazing land. But Trump's statement makes it sound like black and white. Christians are victims. Muslims are aggressors. Send the military. And that's when I started asking, why now? Why this specific framing? And why does this feel familiar? Because there is another country Trump is threatening right now, using almost the same language, and when you see the pattern, everything changes. While Trump is threatening Nigeria, he's also threatening military action against Venezuela with a different excuse. He's talking about drug cartels and instability there. But look at what these two countries have in common. 1. Both are massive oil producers. 2. Both recently opened refineries to process their own oil, meaning they are importing less from the US. 3. Both are de-dollarizing, moving away from using US dollars in trade. 4. Both just made major deals with Russia and China. Now, you might be saying that's just coincidence, but let me show you what Nigeria did in the months before Trump's threat. In January 2025, Nigeria became a partner country in BRICS. That's the economic bloc challenging Western dominance. They didn't fully join, but they are in the room now talking to China, Russia, India, South Africa. In February, they renewed their currency swap agreement with China, meaning Nigerian businessmen can now trade freely in Naira and Yuan, bypassing the dollar entirely. In September, Nigeria voted with Palestine at the UN, directly opposing the US-Israel position. In October, they signed a $2.5 billion nuclear power deal with Russia. Around the same time, they opened the Dangote Refinery, Africa's largest, that processes 650,000 barrels of oil per day. And recently, Dangote announced that that refinery was going to double in capacity. He said, making it the largest refinery in the world with a capacity of 1.4 million barrels per day, dethroning India. And overnight, Nigeria went from importing refined oil from America to being self-sufficient. And when the US proposed replacing French military forces in Nigeria, basically offering American troops on Nigerian soil, Nigeria said no. So now, I want you to ask yourself, when Trump threatens military action, is he really responding to a pastor's viral video? Or is he responding to Nigeria getting economic and strategic ties with the West? Now, there is an African proverb I always like to use, and I really want you to say it with me. When elephants fight, the grass suffers. And right now, who is the grass? Nigeria is the grass, caught between elephants. The US sees Nigeria's moves, China, Russia, dedollarization, BRICS, as a direct threat to US interest or influence in Africa. And look, I'm going to be real with you. America isn't threatening Nigeria out of pure humanitarian concern. If that were true, they would intervene in a dozen other countries where atrocities are happening right now. But here is the other side. China and Russia aren't in Nigeria out of the goodness of their hearts either. They want resources, contracts, influence. They are offering Nigeria deals that don't come with Western democracy conditions, but they are still deals that benefit Beijing and Moscow. And this way it gets painful for those of us who care about African sovereignty, because Nigeria is trying to do something that should be normal: diversify its partnerships, control its own resources, make its own decisions. But in today's world, that's seen as picking a side. So what does Trump really want from Nigeria? I will give you both arguments and you will tell me which one you believe. Argument 1. Trump genuinely cares about Christian persecution. Now, the evangelical base in America has been pushing this narrative for years. Organizations like Open Doors have documented violence against Christians globally. When Trump sees those videos of a pastor begging for help, he responds. He freezes aid, makes threats, put Nigeria on a watch list. All of that to put pressure on the Nigerian government to protect its Christians. And you know what? For millions of American Christians, this makes Trump look like a faith defender. So this is politically smart at home. Argument 2. This whole thing is about resources, power, and control. Now, Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa. It has oil, natural gas, and rare earth minerals critical for technology and defense. We should remember that recently China banned all rare earth exports to the US, and this immediately stopped manufacturing in many sectors. For decades, the US and Europe controlled access to those resources, either directly or through economic leverage. But now Nigeria is saying, we will refine our own oil, we will trade in our own currency, we will work with whoever offers us the best deal. And from Washington's perspective, that's unacceptable, not because they are evil. Every major power does this, but because they see Nigeria's independence as a threat to American strategic interests. Lose Nigeria to Russia and China, and you lose the linchpin of West Africa. So which one is it? Which is the right argument? Here is what I think, and you can disagree with me in the comment section. It's both, but one matters more than the other. Now, Trump probably cares about Christians being unalived in Nigeria. But if Nigeria was fully aligned with American interests, if they were still importing American oil, using dollars, letting US companies dominate their economy, I don't think we will be seeing these threats. The pastor's videos would have been a talking point. Maybe some aid packages, but not military action threats. The timing gives it away. Nigeria makes all these strategic moves away from the West, and suddenly there is a crisis that requires intervention. Come on. And this is where it gets tricky for Africa, because the crisis, the violence in Nigeria is real. Those 7,000 Christians that were unalived in Nigeria, they are not statistics. They are people, fathers, mothers, kids, brothers, sisters, and they deserve protection. But when external powers frame the problem in a way that serves their interest, when they simplify a complex conflict into Christian versus Muslim and ignore that Muslims are being unalived too, it makes everything worse. Now, China's foreign ministry spokesperson said it pretty directly. We oppose any meddling in domestic affairs under the pretext of religion and human rights. And you know what's frustrating? She's right. Russia and China meddle too, just with different excuses. So here's what this really comes down to, and I want you to carefully think about this. For the first time in a long time, an African country with actual economic weight is saying, we are going to make our own choices. And the response from the most powerful country on earth is, fall in line, or we consider military force. That's the story. Everything else, the pastor, the Christians, the terrorism, is real, but it's also the framing. It's the part of the story that makes intervention seem justified. Look, I can't tell you exactly what Trump wants from Nigeria, because I suspect even his own administration is split on that. Some people probably do care about Christians. Some people want to counter China. Some people want access to resources. Some people just want to look strong. But here is what I know for sure. This moment matters. Nigeria is testing whether African countries can actually be independent players in a multipolar world. If Nigeria gets pressured into falling back in line, other countries will notice. But if Nigeria holds its ground and the sky doesn't fall, other countries will notice that too. And here is where you come in. I need you to do something for me, not just like and subscribe, though you should absolutely do that, but actually pay attention on how the story gets told in the media you consume. When you see headlines about Nigeria over the next few months, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. Who benefits from this narrative? 2. What part of the story are being left out? And 3. Would this same intervention be proposed if Nigeria was still economically dependent on the West? Drop your answers in the comments. Tell me if Trump is genuinely trying to protect Christians, or if this is about resource and power. Tell me if you think Nigeria can actually navigate this, or if they are about to be crushed between superpowers. And if you are from Nigeria or anywhere in Africa, tell me how this looks from your perspective, because that's the voice that matters most in this story. And remember, this story isn't over yet. Not by a long shot. The pastor's video was just the opening scene. What happens next will tell us whether Africa can write its own script, or if we are still reading from someone else's book. I am watching, and I hope you are too. I'm Asongwe Luis. You're watching Africa Today, and this is the Strategic Lens. See you in my next investigation. Bye.